So, our first heading is straight to Jerusalem. Straight to Jerusalem. Look at verses 32 through 34 with me. They were on their way up to Jerusalem with Jesus leading the way. I do like that verse. And the disciples were astonished, while those who followed were afraid. Again, he took the 12 aside and told them what was going to happen to him. We are going up to Jerusalem, he said, and the Son of Man will be betrayed to the chief priests and teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death and will hand him over to the Gentiles. And they will mock him and spit on him, flog him and kill him. And 3 days later, he will rise. Now, the first thing to notice here is that Jesus' commitment to his mission. He is not going away from Jerusalem. He is not going away from the pain and the suffering and the purpose of his life. By going away from Jerusalem, he is going to Jerusalem. He's not acting like Jonah in this moment, running in the complete opposite direction that he's supposed to go. No, Jesus, unlike Jonah, is going straight head on into the purpose for which he came to this world. He's going to Jerusalem. There's a toughness about Jesus. There's a strength about Jesus in this. And there's also something to be said about him leading out front. Now, it says, on the one hand, that's a picture of discipleship. Jesus is in front. He's our captain, leading the way. We're not out front leading the way, and Jesus is following us. We follow Jesus. And the way we do that today is right here in his word. It says also this, though, the companionship of Jesus in our experiences, because Jesus was going out in front of them, leading the way. He was stepping into the upcoming experience first ahead of his disciples. He doesn't send us into anything that he himself has not already tasted. I love how Hebrews chapter 4, I can find my way there real quick. Hebrews chapter 4, in imploring us to be prayerful, it says this. It says, therefore, since we have a great high priest who has gone through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold firmly to the faith we profess. For we do not have a high priest who's unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, and yet was without sin. So Jesus, in his incarnation, that is, in his becoming a man, stepping into humanity, understands what it means to be human, and therefore understands what we experience. And he understands temptation because he himself, it says, was tempted, yet was without sin. Jesus is never sending us into anything that he himself has not already experienced or tasted or intends for us to experience alone. We don't go through anything alone when we have Christ. He leads out front. Always keep that picture in mind, that the Lord Jesus Christ, when you follow him, he leads you by going ahead of you. So Jesus, again, is giving them a private discourse. He's giving them exclusive content that was not available to the Pharisees or the crowds at large. At this point, they were just getting parables. And Jesus is just speaking plainly to them, telling them straight up what's going to happen when they get to Jerusalem. And you'll notice this time that Peter is silent. In chapter 8, Peter wasn't silent. Peter rebuked Jesus for talking the way that he's talking right here in these verses. Jesus, in turn, rebuked Peter and put him in his place and told him he doesn't have in mind the things of God, but he has in mind the things of man. And he also said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan." A very sharp sting, no doubt. And so Peter's silence here should not be construed as somehow agreeing with and finally coming to terms with what Jesus is saying. This is just merely Peter avoiding another painful rebuke from the mouth of Jesus. So here in this point, up to Jerusalem, what we see is Jesus as the servant of the Lord, faithfully going to Jerusalem to carry out the mission that his Father had given him. An application for us here is this. We must be committed to going to our own Jerusalems. Jesus was going to Jerusalem to die. There was only pain, humiliation, and suffering in Jerusalem. And yet that is where the will of God was leading him. And what is our Jerusalem? What pain and suffering and hardship lies on our road that Jesus is leading us into? We must not shrink back from it or turn aside from it. We must not be Jonahs and try and flee to our own Tarshish. But instead, we must resolve the way Jesus did, with the grace and the strength that he gives, to go forward into whatever he has in front of us and go to Jerusalem.